Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? And happy Super Sunday. The big game. Can't say the name of the game because apparently if you're a person that exists in the world and you don't have a contract with the NFL, you're not allowed to say the two words that I'm not going to say because I don't want to get fucking sued. Yes, it's your boy Jonathan Macri with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast here with Jeremy Cohen. I'm a little bit loopy today. How are you, Jeremy?
Yeah, I'm fine. Tired. Long week. Excited for I don't know. For it
Just
not to
say
be
it.
the trade deadline anymore. What?
I thought you were going to say excited for the All-Star break. That's what I'm excited
Oh, that
for.
too. Yes. Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
I love this team. I'm excited to also give it a week. You know, just a week to be human again.
I feel like it's been. I mean, we're not really gonna do a whole big picture overview because we'll save that for next week. We'll do a whole bunch of stuff for the All-Star break, but like it's been for as good as they are, and for as good as their record is, I should say, have been very good last little bit. This has been a very up and down season. It's been, I think, it's emotional is the wrong word, but it's been like, I don't know, it's been pretty intense, right? And then you had one big trade, and then you had another big trade, and there's been a lot of injuries and stuff. So it's been, I mean, and it's left us feeling a certain type of way. I can only imagine how the players are feeling, who are the ones, who actually have to do the thing on the court that we talk about every week.
It's probably tough. Yeah, I would say that's it's a tougher job than what we have.
Slightly. Like just a little bit, like really,
yeah.
And who could be certain? So here we are. We are recording this as I don't know if I actually mentioned it at 9:43 in the a.m. On Sunday. So this episode's dropping a little earlier than usual. So we are about 12 hours removed, not quite, from the Knicks' loss to the Indiana Pacers at home. They finished up what was essentially a month of home games at they finished up a month of home games because the two games that they played away from Madison Square Garden were in Brooklyn and in Charlotte, where there were far more Knicks fans than Nets fans and Hornets fans, respectively, at those two games. So, it's been a month that the Knicks, we looked at ahead of this part of the schedule, and we were like, the Knicks need to clean up. And I would say that even though they are entering these last two pre All-Star break games, having lost 3 of 4, they did what they needed to do. If we zoom out, you could, and well, again, we'll zoom out maybe a little bit later. But as far as the week in review, it is 3 losses in 4 games, and for this week in particular, which we are focusing on, it is 1 win and 2 losses. They started off with what was a win against the Memphis Grizzlies, 123-113. If there was ever a game this season where a win felt like a loss, it was probably this. If not this, then maybe it was the other Grizzlies game. But it was, I think this more so because Jalen Brunson was healthy for most of this game until the last 5 minutes, which leads us to the next game in our week in review, which is the Mavs game, which Jalen Brunson did not play in. And the fact that Brunson didn't play, I think, kind of cemented that would be a loss because it was the night of the trade deadline. They didn't have anybody. And so really, like, they fought valiantly. That, of all the games this season, was probably the loss that felt most like not like a win, but felt most positive. And then it all led up to last night, which is, I think, we're going to probably spend the majority of our time talking about, because I think last night was the culmination, the manifestation, I don't know what word you want to use, of some different issues that are plaguing this team right now that we don't think will necessarily be long-term issues, but there's a lot of balls in the air. So that was the week that was obviously the big story. They traded for Burks and Bojan. OG Anunoby had surgery. I mentioned the Brunson miss game, and then Hartenstein obviously also missed last night because he messed up his Achilles in some way, shape, or form in the Mavs game. So this is probably the biggest week of the season. Before we get into some specific discussion topics, any overarching thoughts for you?
This was probably the worst week of the season, and yet it there were still some highlights, and it doesn't really feel like it's going to drag into much of the rest of the regular season. I mean, you would certainly hope that OG Anunoby can come back in a few weeks, and that Julius Randle's healthy. And Isaiah Hartenstein is just taking the rest of the time between now and the All-Star break to get healthy, so he's ready for that stretch run from the end of the All-Star break or the second half of the season until and through the playoffs. But none of it is really shaking me to my core. It's just kind of like, yeah, this was a bad week, but it doesn't feel indicative of who or what this team is moving forward. And with that, like, if you want to call it copium, then sure. It's more just like that Mavs game. I watched it. I also felt like if I missed this, wouldn't matter at all, because what is this game really going to tell us? Like, what is the Charlie Brown Jr. game going to tell us in the long term? Probably nothing. And I don't mean that as disrespect to him. I just mean that in that he wouldn't get playing time with a healthy roster. The Pacers game, it was your first game with Bogdanovich. Burks returns, but they're down to their fourth string center, and they've got Precious Achiuwa as well as the other option. You got Jalen Brunson finally coming back and letting it up, but he's only one person. He can only do so much against a good team. And the Grizzlies game, we were doing the watch along. You were right in terms of the 3-point shooting, the barrage of threes that just rained down at Madison Square Garden. It's going to haunt you forever. That happened. Yes, and even still, it's just like, yes, it's going to happen on any given night, but it just so happened it was this night. So it felt like all of the perfect storm coming to play this week. You hope it doesn't carry over, but the Knicks just need to get into the All-Star break. They just need to get past these two games so they can rest, get healthy. But more importantly, you don't have to have Josh Hart playing 40 plus a night and probably having nightmares in his sleep at the mere fact of that he has to run consistently, especially perhaps bulky knee. So they just need to limp their way through to the finish line. They're almost there. And then hopefully we're having healthier, more exciting conversations in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, it's really weird. And we'll jump into our discussion topics, which Andrew, as always, has been kind enough to write down. And I'm kind of going to bastardize what he wrote a little bit, because I feel like a lot of these different things tie together. So we obviously have this situation where last night, Mitchell Robinson out, Hardenstein out, Sims out. And I'm going to throw in, I know that this is the specific conversation that is on a lot of people's minds right now is whether the Knicks should sign a center, literally today as you're listening to this, so they could help get by in these two games before the All-Star break. We'll get to that in a second. The thing I want to point out here, and I'll say why in a second, is that OG Anunoby obviously was out for this game as well. So, okay, why am I making a point to mention that a guy was out who's been out for the previous, two plus weeks? It's because this was the first game all season where none of Mitch, Hardenstein, and OG Anunoby played. And I bring that up to you specifically because I know from all of the cap or no caps that we've done, one of your favorite advanced stats is defensive EPM. And I went and looked this morning. The three players that I just mentioned, Mitch, Hardenstein, OG, they're all in the top 15 in DEPM. And among players who play at least half of the game, so 24 minutes a game, they are in the top 10. It's the first game all season they didn't have any of those three guys. So I thought it was, and who were they playing on the night they didn't have all those three guys? The best offense in basketball. So to say that we should not be making a whole lot out of this Pacer game, I think is, and to some extent the Mavs game before it, I think is quite an understatement. And yet, again, I'm not saying I just said we should not make a big deal out of it. I agree with you. Just get into the All-Star break, get past that. I don't have long-term concerns about what this team is going to look like. I think they're going to look really good. I'm excited to see what they look really good when they get healthy. But because the goalposts, I feel like, have now changed, largely because of the trades, but and I think this group has come together really well. Like I don't know how else to say this. Every game matters. It's like every loss matters when you're chasing who you're chasing in the standings, especially since one of the teams that you're chasing doesn't seem to ever want to lose again. Of course, I'm talking about Cleveland. So, like, I don't know where that places the level of stress for me right now. Like, I'm not worried about the long term. I'm not bothered by like this loss to the Pacers, not bothered by loss to the Mavs. And at the same time, we have 2 more games going into the break against we'll talk about them later, the Rockets and the Magic on the road. Neither will be an easy game, both winnable, both losable. Like, I'd rather not lose both of these before the All-Star break, because then you wonder how much separation is going to be there between you and the teams that you're chasing. So if I'm going to do like a big picture right now, I think that's kind of where my mindset is at.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Can you summarize it? Where exactly is your mindset at?
I'm not worried, but I'm worried. Which is basically my mindset for every podcast that we've done over the last 5 years.
I was going to say, why is this night different from all other nights? But that's okay. So, yeah, I hear what you're saying in terms of the lack of talent on the floor and how that impacts the defense. And it absolutely does. And it's concerning. Of course it's concerning. But I'm also at a point where it's like, well, what are they really supposed to do? Like, what? Right. There is no margin 10-day contract magic that inspires the level of confidence that people think that it might. And I just it's one of those things where I just have to shrug and say, you got to try to win these games at a certain point. Yes, you're absolutely right, John. They do add up in the standings. And when you look back and it's like, well, why couldn't we have done this? Well, because we weren't healthy. But it's not like the Knicks have invested in several players who are injury prone, right? Like Mitchell Robinson, yes, he misses time, misses sometimes significant time. OG Anunoby gets nicked up every year. It's just a way that it just happens. But Julius Randle, up until last year, workhorse. Isaiah Hartenstein played all 82 games. Jalen Brunson is typically very durable. Right. He missed
for what he is, for what his size is. He's Iron
exactly.
Man. Yeah.
So it seems silly to be like, well, that's just the way it is. But there sometimes isn't another reason behind it. Like, these were good teams that the Knicks faced, and they faced them with significantly fewer good players than the other teams had. Yeah. And the other teams won those games. And that's fine. Like, we're going to look at 3 Pacers games that are in the books. All 3 of them done.
Yeah.
Not a single one featured OG Anunoby on the court.
Yeah. I know.
Like, if we're talking about what's supposedly one of the best players in the NBA on the offensive side, in Tyrese Halliburton, for him not to go a single game matched up against the Knicks' best defender.
Yeah.
Also without Mitchell Robinson for all 3 of those games. Like, it tells me that the Pacers did a great job of winning 2 out of those 3, almost 3 out of 3, but they lost one of them. And the Knicks finding ways, or needing to find additional ways to get more from their group, but they're stretched so thin that it's tough to do. And when you get someone like Bojan Bogdanovic, it's great that the Knicks didn't have to give up a first round pick for him. There's also a reason why he didn't generate one, because he's 4th in defensive. He's 4th percentile in defensive EPA.
Yeah, he's not a good defender.
You pay for it to an extent too. So it's not like the Knicks made these defensive upgrades that also would have helped them last night. They just got good, healthy players that can help rest their other players who are already so burnt out that they just need the break as well. Yeah. So I'm hopeful the next 2 games, at least one win can come of it, but your hands are tied at this point to a very great extent.
I completely agree with you. And that's why I realize I should choose my words better. I am worried about the fact that, again, because the goalposts have moved. You told me before the season the Knicks were going to end up with the 4 seed. I'd be throwing a freaking party. And now it's like, the 4 seed, Boston second round. All of a sudden we're thinking second round. Is it like a fait accompli? Like, they have a long way to go before they get there. But I'm not frustrated. I think that's the distinction. Worried, but not frustrated. And just to put some numbers to what we've been talking about, in this team this year has played 800 by cleaning the glass. 827 possessions without any of the 3 players I just mentioned, Hartenstein, Robinson, OG Anunoby. outscored by 11.3 points per 100 in those 827 possessions. Terrible offense, terrible defense. And then if you add in Sims to the mix, so basically Achua or Gibson at center, it goes to minus 14.5 differential in 512 possessions with a worse defense and a much worse offense, which I find most interesting, perhaps. So yeah, that's that. And here's the other thing. We're talking about this Pacers game and then the game before it where they struggled also, I think, defensively against the Mavericks. The Pacers this season are the first-ranked offense. I mentioned that. The Mavericks this season are the 7th-ranked offense. The next two teams they play are the 22nd and 24th ranked offenses. So hopefully these are a little bit better matchups for where they are at right now. You talked about the center thing. Should the Knicks sign someone to a 10-day contract? I mean, the notion of bringing in someone off the street who's completely unfamiliar with your system and who you are unfamiliar with to a greater extent and expecting them to help you win a basketball game or basketball games. I think I'm with you. Man, I'd love to know what's going on with Sims. 3 games with an illness. Does that maybe that should have been the lead story? Like why? Like what's going on with him? I don't know. It's that. Yeah.
It's the winter. We've all had colds or illnesses that last. I don't know. I'm not ready to get the.
I'm not either.
Coroner out here, but yeah, like I don't know. Look,
I'm ready to get the coroner.
Yeah, like it's an illness. I don't know.
Jesus Christ!
I thought that's the vibe you were going for. Like,
coroner.
That's where you're going. Like, oh, it's not 3 games. Check his pulse. Like, I don't know. It's an illness. He's. I don't know.
Should we check the Borgs? Oh my God. Oh man. All right. I don't even know what to say.
All right. A couple things. First off, let's talk about what the buyout 10-day rest season market looks like. So before the Knicks re-signed Taj Gibson or thereabouts, they had options, just a couple off the top of the head: Bismack Biyombo, Robin Lopez. Bismack Biyombo chose to sign a contract, seemed like it was for the rest of the season, with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Yep. Now, it's a rest season contract that they gave to him, so it's money that they were willing to spend. He may not have wanted to come to New York because the whole process would have been like, well, you could be the 4th string center in New York, and maybe he didn't want that. Maybe he wanted a clear path to playing. The Thunder are obviously a very good team as well. They needed a veteran in the backcourt, in the front court, excuse me.
Yeah, because they don't have any traditional bigs. He at least he gives them one traditional big, right, on their roster.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the path for him to get what he's looking for was clearer. Robin Lopez really just hasn't been a productive center in a few years. If the Bucks wanted to move him, I understand that there were salary implications from the tax. They saved money by dumping him to Sacramento. With that said, if he were a valuable piece to them, I don't think that they would have moved him. I think that they would have sucked it up and said, this is the finances we're dealing with. It's fine because he's a winnable player. But all of that is kind of moot, and I'll explain why. And it's working backwards. You might be thinking, well, as of right now, the Knicks are about $2.5 million away from the luxury tax. So it's fine. They have money to spend. If they really wanted to go out and get someone, they could. And as a reminder, these rest of season contracts are prorated. Every single day, the amount drops bit by bit. 10-day contracts also exist. If you're signing Bismack Biyombo to a rest of season contract, then you're paying, hundreds of thousands of dollars for him to sit on your bench. For example, the Knicks are paying Taj Gibson $116,000 for every 10 days that he's on this team. And you might be thinking, well, that shouldn't matter to me. I don't care about the taxes. And I get it, but it's further than that. And here's why. There is a star, and I'll be kind of vague when I say it, but there's a star that I believe the Knicks will go hard after this summer. And you might be thinking, how does that impact the Knicks? Because they're probably not trading for any player this season before July 1st when the new year turns over. So why would that star impact the Knicks? And a lot of it has to do with matching salary. And My theory, and we'll see if this is true, is that the Knicks are going to try to stay above the $2 million mark range. They might go a little bit under. It's very possible. But I think they're going to try to hover around the $2 million in luxury tax space. It's like,
okay, why?
Because of salary matching for a theory that I have, which I will elaborate on. And my theory will either unfold itself or it won't, depending on how the Knicks operate over the next 2 months, okay. which comes into focus of these 10-day contracts. Okay. So you have 14. I said this on the live stream, but you can go 28 days through the season with fewer than 14 players on your roster. The Knicks kicked that off on February 8th when they had 14 players, but you can only do it in 14-day increments. The max you can have fewer than 14 players on your roster is 14 days. So February 8th would take us to like February 21st, February 22nd. Taj's 10-day contract expires sometime over the All-Star break. Fred asked who I thought the Knicks might sign. And the answer that I gave, and the one that I'm more confident in, is that they would go for a young player who has next to no NBA experience. It's their rookie year. And the reason is that the 10-day contract that a player that's in year 0, which is their rookie year, would be signing is $64,000. If they signed a player who had 1 year of experience, it'd be $103,500. If they sign any player who's had 2 or more years of NBA experience, the cap hit would be $116,000, exactly what Taj has. My hunch is that the Knicks will go through the duration of Taj's 10-day contract. And then the day before or the day of that first game that they come back for the All-Star break, they'll sign 2 10-day contracts for guys who have had limited to no NBA experience and are essentially rookies, right? Like anyone from their G League roster, Jalen Martin, anyone else who's there, like they could sign 2 of those guys.
Summer League star Jalen Martin.
Right. And these are players who you're not expecting to see time at all. It's just meeting the requirements, and that they keep doing this in a way where they buy their time or bide time and get multiple 10-day guys on the books, meet all the CBA requirement crap that they have to do. And then they finally sign 2 players or 1 player, well, really 2 players, to rest of season contracts that are extremely cheap.
Does it need to be 2?
Well, they need to get to 14. Right. So right now they're 12. They're 13 with Taj. Taj's contract comes off the books. So it becomes 12. So they sign 2 10-day players at some point in like February 21st, February 22nd. That gets them 10 days further. Then they can do the whole 14 days without 14 players thing again. They could sign one of those players to a 10-day.
Sure. Okay.
They could then, like there's a whole process they could get to where they just kind of keep getting more time. And then finally, when they have to cycle through all these 10-day contracts and they want to have some sort of non-guaranteed contract on the books for next year, that's when they could go in for the kill of let's sign players to rest of season contracts that are like 150,000, maybe a little bit less than that. There's a way where they can squeeze it down to that. And when you consider all of that, it's why I don't think they're going to go in the direction of signing a rest of season Bismack Biyombo type. Why they're not going to give Robin Lopez a 10-day? Because if you give Robin Lopez a 10-day contract, for example, then that is double the amount that you would give to a rookie player on a 10-day because of how the cap hit works. So it's all financially motivated. And I get it. There's more to this that I'm not saying because I'm trying to be vague, because all will be revealed and I can assess it, and it can either be completely wrong or be right. But I don't think it's going to be completely wrong. I think that they're going to try to find ways to just skirt around the $2 million threshold so that they can get money in, finagle things, and then accomplish what they want this summer. So it's a very long-winded way of saying they're probably not going to go for the buyout market or get these veterans that people are familiar with, because they're not really going to help them win a lot of basketball games. And it's also going to mess up their books most likely. So just if you envision the 14th or 13th roster spots as the glue keeping this team together when they're down bad, then you're probably still looking in the wrong direction, because that's not what they do. They are depth pieces. They are guys that just help you check off the boxes the CBA requires you to check off. So when I look at Taj, I don't look at a guy who like can't do anything right now because age hurts him. I mean, I do see it a little, don't get me wrong, but I primarily see it as you're telling me that the Knicks' fourth string center isn't really fifth string because Precious is there, isn't adequate enough. And like, that's what we're crying about.
Yeah.
That the fifth guy in line can't do the job because the first guy's hurt and the second guy's hurt. And the third guy is I guess I'm saying Precious is the third guy is playing and the fourth guy is already in the morgue. So we're down to the fifth player. Like, again, I don't know what really is supposed to be done while the Knicks balance their finances for stuff you don't have to care about, but you very well may need to care about in the coming months.
No, whether or not we care about it or not.
Not you, by the way, to be clear, not you, John.
I know that. If you like all of the flowers that have been thrown towards Leon Rose and his front office over the last several days, which again, I know is kind of falling flat as you're listening to this like today, because the team is in a little bit of a rut because of these injuries. But if you like seeing like respected NBA people be like, hey, the Knicks have managed their cap and assets as well as any team in the league since Leon Rose took over, then you at least have to respect the fact that the front office cares about the sorts of things that Jeremy is saying. Again, we'll see if they come to fruition or not. Where I'm at is if you're like, well, that's all well and good, but they may have lost a game last night because they didn't have someone better on the roster. Like, if you go through the list of things that needed to happen, again, Hartenstein, Achilles, Sims injury or illness, whatever, thoughts and prayers. And then facing, again, it needs to be said, they faced the number one freaking offense in the league. And they faced it on a night when their hot and cold starting center, Miles Turner, who was often a bellwether for this team, I think he went 7 for 7. I don't think he missed a shot last night. Like, you could be like, whoa, he didn't miss a shot because of who he was playing. Well, no, like the dude was hot. And I'm going to say something probably very controversial. I would rather have Taj the next 2 games than whoever it is that they're going to bring in off the street today. And to be even more specific, if I'm sitting here and I'm Leon Rose and it's 10:08 a.m. as I say these words on Sunday, February 11th, again, unless I know for sure that like Sims has some like the bubonic plague, I'd be like, all right, Hartenstein maybe could give it a go in our next game. Sims maybe could give it a go in our next game. Precious probably going to look better defensively, against our next 2 opponents who do not put as much pressure on you. Taj will look a little bit better. Like, these are all considerations, and the front office has a larger plan at play. So I'm like you. I'm not losing my shit over this.
My biggest worry is that the Knicks sign a nobody or sign some rookie, and the prevailing thought is after, hey, why couldn't the Knicks have just signed an established center who, let's be honest, would be washed and really wouldn't give them a ton, even if it's on a 10-day? The Knicks are being cheap because they're trying to save Dolan money. And I'm telling you,
nothing to do with that.
That's not the case. It's not about a lack of spending money. It's about trying. You only have a finite amount to use. And I still believe that the Knicks will try to use something between now and June 30th. And if they're going to do that, and I think that they will, that they need to exercise as much caution with how they allocate their funds between now and that date. And the only way you can really do that is by being especially frugal now and over the next month and a half to 2 months. And then that way it provides you an avenue to have more flexibility that can then provide you with something larger this summer. So not to be like the Wizard of Oz, like there's a grand plan here, but there is legitimately a grander plan. It just takes the finances that come this year in order to help make that happen.
If anybody wants to know what Jeremy is dancing around, go look up what the first salary apron is this year. And as we've talked about many times, the Knicks can't go over that. So,
it's not even that because that would be past the luxury tax.
Yeah. Oh, you're just talking about
just the luxury tax. Just the Knicks have made a clear, concerted effort to not go ahead of the luxury tax. If they wanted to go ahead of it, they would have done something at the deadline that would have propelled them further. So they want to stay below it, but there's some really
we'll get there. Yeah, we'll get there.
We'll get there. But I truly believe that we're going to look back in a couple months, be like, damn, Brock Aller danced around that tax line in such a way that it led to this, that we have to tip our cap. Not like, damn, Brock Aller danced around that tax line because he's saving Dolan money and like, whoa, big deal. Like, no, it's more about what's the grand prize? Work backwards. And folks that aren't thinking of grand prizes are trying to work forwards, and it can't work that way. It just can't. Because then when you're getting to the point where you want to be, you're going to be in some sort of trouble. And I will happily elaborate on that in the next coming months.
A couple other quickies before we get to game ball. I'll just read what Andrew has here. The Bucks are 4-9 since hiring Doc Rivers. Are they really that bad? My God. And the Sixers have lost 8 of 10. Since the Cavs apparently aren't going to lose ever again, should the 3 seed be the goal for this season? I'll just say briefly, I still think it is the goal. It should be the goal. It's a good goal. It's a worthy goal. But I also don't feel like it's like some kind of travesty if they can't get there, because there's a lot of, it's a lot of unknowns and what have you. Is that still the goal for you though, Jeremy?
I'm going to be pedantic and say the goal should be the 1st seed. You should be the number 1 seed, but I understand.
I love it.
You fall where you fall. Yes. In terms of plausibility, the Celtics are the best team in the NBA. The Cavs have not stopped whatsoever. So I would imagine that getting to the 3rd seed is much more viable. So yes, like that's absolutely a goal. Just get home court advantage. That's what makes me the most comfortable. You get into an interesting spot of like, well, I'd rather play the Cavs than the Celtics. And yes, I would probably rather play the Cavs than the Celtics in the playoffs. But you also have to get past your 1st round series in order to make that distinction. And oftentimes chips just fall where they may.
Last thing before we move on to game ball that I just want to throw in. So for anybody who may have missed the specifics of the OG news, he will resume basketball activities, on-court activities. I forget what the hell the verbiage was, whatever it is. I guess, if we go back from the report, 2 to 3 weeks, or about 3 weeks, so that's right after the All-Star break, right? I am assuming that the absolute soonest that we will see either him or Julius Randle back on a court and in uniform will be about 2 weeks after the All-Star break. So I'm just looking ahead. They play at Philly, home Boston, at Detroit, home New Orleans, home Golden State, at Cleveland. You think that might be a notable game. And then if we want to extend it out to or home for Atlanta on March 5th. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games. And now we're talking 2 games before the All-Star break. That's 9 games. So I want to make this point because I do think it's relevant for more than just the next 2. I think it's going to be relevant for a while afterwards. I'm curious to see about the minutes now that they have their 2 new additions here, Bogey and Burks. So last night, Bogey played 33 minutes. Burks played 22 minutes. McBride, interestingly enough, only 10. Looking back over the last 7 games, obviously 6 of these games were before 6 of these games are without Burks and Bogey. New York has 3 of the top 7 guys in terms of minutes per game in the league. Precious Achiuwa, 40.5. He's actually number 1. DiVincenzo, 40.3, tied with DeMar DeRozan for number 2. And then Josh Hart at 39 minutes even. I'm just curious to see how those minutes continue to even out moving forward. And the center spot does have a little bit to do with this, because if you get Hardenstein/Sims/ both of those guys back, it lessens the need for Precious to play the 4. And then if you don't play Precious at the 4, then that opens up more minutes. It's a trickle-down effect. So just something to monitor, because I think anybody watching this team at this point would agree these guys, they can't be like they're diminishing returns in terms of how many minutes these guys are playing. So I wanted to throw it out there, something I'm going to be watching for moving forward. That's it. Anything you want to say on that?
Definitely worthwhile. I think the other fascinating part of this is, let's say OG doesn't come back until after the Cavs game.
Sure.
Due to health. He will have missed 3 games against Pacers, all 3 games against the Cavs, 4 out of 5 against the Celtics, 4 out of 5 against the Bucks. Those are the other top 5 squads. There is an element of surprise if you don't play OG Anunoby, that you don't kind of tip your hand at how you would attack those teams. Like if we see OG out there, it's easy to imagine that he would match up against Donovan Mitchell for the most part, maybe switch at other points, but like they have to be the ones to guess in a playoff series. And I think almost having that mystery could help the Knicks benefit in terms of a surprise effect of how, it's all about countering and going from game to game, making alterations. So that element of surprise could help the Knicks. But in terms of the minutes, I would agree it'll come more into focus when there's a healthy team. You probably also feel a little bit better about playing Bogdanovich more minutes when you have Isaiah Hartenstein and OG Anunoby healthy, especially if you also have Mitchell Robinson healthy. And if Isaiah Hartenstein is starting even when Mitchell Robinson's healthy and Bogdanovich is coming off the bench, you would imagine that Bogdanovich would see most of his time with Mitchell Robinson, who
you would think so.
Who, despite having a slightly worse defensive EPM than Isaiah Hartenstein, to me is still a better rim protector as a whole, but Hartenstein's game on offense opens up more for the offensive side. So you can mix and match accordingly. It all is about, can the Knicks get healthy? And will Jericho Sims survive the scurvy outbreak that only he has? I don't know. I really don't know.
He's patient zero. That's what it is. He's patient zero.
Yeah. It's crazy. This is like new COVID, and Jericho Sims is the first person to get it. He got it from the horses that he was riding. He's got some beautiful horses. He caught
Jokic. Better watch out.
And now, he should.
No, it's a tough.
If that
tough times for
centers. Yeah, it really is.
Let's give out a game ball before we get sued from the estate of Jericho Sims.
He's not dead. To our knowledge. Wouldn't be his estate. Actually, if it were his estate, that would clear up a lot of things. We'd know he'd be dead. And hopefully he's not. Hopefully he is alive and kicking like his horses.
If this gets back to Jericho, I love you. You're awesome. Great. You're fine. Most importantly,
we just want you to rest up.
Game ball given out to a player, coach, or entity that like somebody's estate. That's an entity that stood out this week and deserves special recognition. Jalen Brunson, at this point we could just rename the category Jalen Brunson's game ball. In his 2 games this week, 66 points on 54.3% shooting, and he's made his debut on the Tonight Show, which apparently Clyde had never seen before.
It's always a mystery.
Hysterical. Dante DiVincenzo scored 82 points, 13 of 33s in 3 games in 123 minutes. Is apparently Klay Thompson now. Fell off, finally fell off a little bit against the Pacers, but he had been on the tear of tears. Precious, 45 points and 27 rebounds in 3 games, 125 minutes, my lord. Has 2 legs and can walk, which is currently rare for this team. Josh Hart, 23, 10, and 12 on Thursday, 112 minutes in the 3 games. He can also walk upright successfully, allegedly. And then Quentin Grimes, 1 final game ball nomination after 2.5 years in New York. You won this week, right? Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I did.
So
yeah,
it's yours.
Yes, it is. I will reclaim what's rightfully mine. I'm going to go with Dante DiVincenzo.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, not because I think he was the best performer, but because it's almost like Al Pacino's Scent of a Woman. Like he deserved it earlier, but it just didn't get to him. So he's just been lights out. The shooting has been elite for the last however many weeks. Like he has come into his own. He's carried this team in quite a few ways. I think what you said about the high usage, that it would go to Dante, turned out to be pretty clairvoyant. So he's just the spark that this team has needed. And he is someone that you didn't think you're going to count on quite this much this year, but has been more than just an off-ball shooter that functions in a Tibbs offense. And I think it's a testament too of, Quentin Grimes was this team's starting 2 guard last year and to start the season. And a big issue that Grimes had was he couldn't do the things that were more than be the stationary catch and shoot 3 guy from the corner. And DiVincenzo is showing, well, it's not really the system. It's just, I can do this. And Grimes is not as capable of doing it. And that's fine. I hope Grimes finds that role in Detroit. It would mean that they've maximized him as a player. But for what DiVincenzo does and the dimensions that it opens, it's not just a player who's standing in the corner or standing above the break, who's one pass away. It's someone who can actually make something happen with the basketball when it gets to him. So he's been phenomenal and he deserves his flowers. So it is Donte DiVincenzo.
Thank you for taking pity on me for, although I actually couldn't have won this week because you picked 1 and 2 and it was 1 and 2. So maybe that's why you're taking pity on me and you're leaving me Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson, last 13 games. Again, this is a little bit Pacino sent of a woman because Brunson actually missed 1 game this week, and yet he's still getting my game ball. Here's his last 13. So out of the last 13 games the Knicks have played, he has played in 12 of them because he, again, missed the 1 game this week. He's averaging 32.9 points over those dozen games. Among players who have played at least 6 of the last 13 NBA games that their teams have played, that 32.9 points per game is second in the league. Luka, because he's insane, is at 37.4. He's played in 11 of those 13 games. Embiid would be second, but he only played in 5 games. He's at 36.8. And then there's Jalen Brunson trailing Luka and Joel for third in points. Here are the guys that are immediately following Brunson: Devin Booker, Steph Curry, SGA, Giannis, Nikola Jokic. So how many MVPs on that list? 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice company to be in. He's shooting 52.3% from the field, and that span only 35.1% from deep, because as DJ Zulo continues to beat the dead horse, and as he should, the 3-point looks are just not there in terms of the quality ever since Randall went down. And best of all, I just mentioned a whole bunch of pretty high caliber names, right? The plus 10.6. That is better than any of those other 7 names that I read. Next best is Booker at plus 9.8. In those, again, the Knicks' last 13 games, of which Brunson has played 12, with him on the court, they are outscoring opponents by 15.1 points per 100 possessions. When he is off the court, they are getting outscored by 2.3 points per 100 possessions. That's an MVP candidate. And in some years in NBA history, that would be an MVP. Actually, let me take a step back. That is an MVP. Now, I'm only talking about the last 12 games, not his full season. If you go full season, it's a little bit of a different conversation, but I have just described an MVP. And that's the level that he has been playing. So he has been playing at an MVP level for the better part of a month, full stop, no asterisks, no nothing. You give the team performance, individual stats, impact on the team. It's all there. It's all there. The guy is insane, and we get to watch it right now. And I don't know what else there is to say about that.
He's 9th in the NBA in estimated wins.
Yeah. How's that? That's pretty good.
It's pretty good for a free agent signing. Like who was overpaid at the time. But no, he's been great. It's I like, to your point, like it wasn't pity. I mean, it was a little pity. Like, look at the scoreboard. But it was really just at a certain point, there's almost fatigue. It's like giving a player 3 MVPs in a row. Like, we got to give it to someone else. But I agree that this should almost be the Jalen Brunson TM game ball award at this point.
Yeah.
That's
completely agree. Completely. That's a good stat, by the way. Detention given to a player, coach, or entity that deserves to sit down for a while and think about what they did wrong. God and Tibbs. I see only one person there. It's like the Holy Trinity. Can I tell you something funny?
Mm-hmm.
That my daughter, I promise this will be not longer than a minute. My daughter is in like the religion classes now because she goes to public school, and you know we're a Catholic family, very devout, and she is going to these little classes over the weekend. And yesterday's class for her, they went over like the body and the blood of Christ and how it's the Eucharist and the whole thing. So I picked her up and I asked her, I'm like, so what'd you learn? She's like, oh yeah, we learned about, it's the body of Christ. I'm like, well, it's not really the body of Christ, right? She's like, no, it represents the body and blood of Christ. I was like, okay, glad we got that sorted out. And I said, why did they tell you why you're drinking something that represents the body and blood of Christ? She's like, no, they didn't go over that. So I'm like, this is time for dad to fill in the gaps. I was like, it's like a vampire. You want to be closer to the individual that you are, joining as one with. And that is like, so Jesus is like, or we are like vampires. And then Jesus is our victim. Did you like that analogy?
Yeah, that was great.
Okay. It only represents it, Andrew. It only represents it.
It is Sunday morning after all. So it was good that we got some religion brought to the KFS pod.
This is the closest I'm getting to church. Okay. Anyway, so God and Tibbs, glad we went down that road. Whoever you blame
connection between that and you're like, I've got a story to tell. What's going through your mind? You're like, oh,
because it said God and Tibbs are the same person to me, like the Holy Trinity, and that's what got me thinking of this.
You get to vampires?
I don't know. My mind works in strange ways. Whoever you blame for the injuries that have left the Knicks currently shorthanded, as Jeremy is losing it. But Bojan Bogdanovic, 3 of 10 in his debut. He has not won a game as a Knick. That was a nice stat there, Andrew. Deuce, 4 of 18 from 3 this week. So that kind of finally fell off. 25% in his last 6 games. Taj, this is not necessarily for poor performance. It is for his own good, and don't want to see you join Jericho Sims at the morgue. Jesus. And Jaime Jaquez Jr. still here from the last several weeks and will be here for the foreseeable future. I will go with man, I really don't want to put anyone in detention. I'm definitely not putting God in detention, especially not after that story. I'll stick Jaime Jaquez Jr. in there. It's too easy. Fuck Miami.
I'll go with Taj, but again, not because it's Taj. It's a situation like he happens to be the person where this falls on his shoulders. And since Jericho Sims is suffering from whooping cough and Mitchell Robinson doesn't have an ankle to stand on, and Isaiah Hartenstein has, misplaced his Achilles for the moment, at least a healthy one. It's on his shoulders and his and my precious. So I don't know, to the point where, I guess I could say Deuce if I didn't say Taj, but if you're counting on Deuce, who's a fine rotation piece, but
they've had to count on him.
Right, but he's still going to be, in my mind, more matching salary who can give you regular season minutes, and that's totally fine because it's not an insult. It's just what he represents, and you can he is important to get in the Knicks to the finish line. So is Taj. These are guys who are doing everything they can to help the Knicks when they need to be picked up the most. It just so happens that the players that they have, also in Taj, it was a close basketball game last night, and the third quarter it all evaporated, and it went from there.
I'm going to ask something completely random before we do predictions. If you were an NBA team and you had the ability to sign either Deuce or Precious to, let's say Deuce's contract this summer, who would you take? All things being equal.
Probably Precious.
Me too.
It's not anything against Deuce because there are good bigs out there, but I think you can find more guards that provide closer to that than Precious. The funny thing about Precious is that he just wasn't before this trade, I would have absolutely said Deuce, but they found a way to unlock Precious in a way that I think other teams might be able to mimic.
That's exactly.
And with Deuce, they a lot of it comes down to is the shooting there. And with Precious, we know the shooting isn't there, but as a 5, when he plays the 5, it's a little bit more there's that margin of error because it's like, well, he's going to do all these other things. And it's not that Deuce can't do those things, but you don't need that shooting from the 5. You do need more shooting from the off-ball spot. So
yeah,
I'd probably go with Precious.
I wouldn't want to see Precious as like a depth piece on an Eastern Conference competitor in the coming years, because I'd be like, oh, fuck, that guy's actually pretty good. Okay. Predictions presented by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/KFS and use code KFS for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, all you do, prizepicks.com/KFS, use the code KFS, just 3 little letters, and they'll match you anywhere you want to be from $1 to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. Oh, look at that. I have fallen behind yet again. Jeremy's at 9-5, which means I am at 5-9. Here are our 4 games. So 2 before the All-Star break, and we're going to do the 2 after the All-Star break because we are pre-recording something because we are taking a little vacation. Monday at Houston. That's an 8 p.m. Start time. Then Wednesday at Orlando. That's a 7 p.m. start time. Then first game after the break at Philadelphia. That is also a 7 p.m. start time. And then that's a Thursday game. And then Saturday night, ABC, prime time, Boston Celtics. That's the Knicks will be back home on my wife's birthday. That is an 8:30 p.m. start time.
It's a tough one. So just thinking this through.
I think there's an obvious one staring at you, but
yes, I agree. But I think looking at this, they matched up poorly against Orlando. But the most important factor in my mind is that I presume they won't have rim protection for another 2 games. And then they're playing the Sixers, who they're pretty terrible without Joel Embiid. They're getting some reinforcement in Kyle Lowry. The Celtics are the Celtics. And is Julius Randle going to be back by that game? I'm going to have to just assume no. I'm going to go 1-3. I don't feel great about it. I think the obvious one you're probably thinking was 2-2. And going into this week, I was thinking, when I thought I was going to win, like, all right, 2-2 feels like a safe version to go with. But that, like, I'm just thinking about what Şengün could do to the Knicks, because the Knicks just don't have someone to really protect the rim consistently while he's out there. Again, the Magic do a really nice job against the Knicks. They've trapped Jalen Brunson pretty well.
Yeah,
I think I'm kind of a little concerned about who's going to stop Banchero and Franz Wagner, because they just have a ton of size, and the Knicks don't have players with size that are healthy right now. I think about the Sixers, where it just takes one game for them to really light things up, and that's kind of that. And then there's the Celtics, where I think it's a lot closer if this team is healthy against that Celtics squad. I don't see a lot of healthy players. I think they'll be healthier. I would hope Hartenstein's back. We'll see if Mitch is back. It seems like he'll be resuming on-court activities, so he won't be quite ready for that then. OG will still be out. It just takes one off game for some of their players, but I don't feel great about 2-2, and I'm going to have to go with 1-3.
You gave me a gift, because if you had taken 2-2, I would have taken 3-1. And so I'll happily take 2-2, which means if they go 2-2, I win. If they go 3-1, I win. I
would have thought you had taken 1-3 for whatever it's worth.
I would hope so. Otherwise, your logic would not have checked out in picking what you picked.
I don't even know who you are anymore.
No, I'm saying it with my full chest. I think, that, hey, listen, I'm always full of surprises, right? When things appear great, I'm going to be negative. And when things appear not great, I'm going to be a little bit more positive. I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know who they're going to do it with, but I do have confidence that this team is going to win at least 2 of the next 4 games. And I would not be surprised if they went 3-1.
Hope you win.
Because we'll see. Listen, I know we're not feeling great after these last couple games, but it's a long season, as we always say on here. It's a long season, and just when you think things are at their worst is when they could turn around, and vice versa. So we will see how they do. And that is it for us. We don't have any announcements. Just enjoy the All-Star break. Actually, one more quick plug for anybody who may have missed it. and is listening to this episode and loves KFS, we have hats for sale. I'm plugging that because Andrew is wearing it right now. I like the blue. I got to say, I like the blue. It's a good look on you, Andrew. It's a good color for you.
Thank you. I wear a lot of blue hats. So
You do. Yes, you do.
It's true.
And when you're wearing, was I?
Comes in handy.
Well, I was gonna say when you're not wearing a blue hat, when you're wearing a Jets hat, you are blue because it's the Jets. So that's works well.
Thank you. I agree.
Yes.
Here's a
Congratulations, Andrew. You popped up here just to get insulted.
Just to, I mean,
Yeah. You're marketing our hats, and we're just going to insult you.
Being a Jets fan quite literally is an insult to my life and just a testament to poor life choices. Can I add one segment that I realize we do this every year where I just forgot to add it?
Sure.
Because we're releasing this on Super Bowl Sunday, and obviously you're listening to this on before the Super Bowl. Gentlemen, your Super Bowl predictions for today.
Jesus.
John, do you know who's playing in the Super Bowl?
Yes, I know who's playing.
Okay.
27 Chiefs, 27 Niners. Oh God, 17.
Okay, Jeremy.
I'll go Chiefs 24, Niners 20.
Okay,
great.
I will go Niners 20. Niners 26, Chiefs 14. No, they're not going to get hold of 14 points. I'll go 26-21 will be the final score. It'll be a weird score like that.
Okay. Giddy up. All right. On that note, thank you, everybody. Lots more stuff coming up this week. We'll have our usual episode dropping next week, even though we will have recorded it beforehand. And everybody be well. And talk to you soon.
Wait. Steve Popper just tweeted out. Was glad we got this in right before the show ended. Slightly better news for the Knicks that they head to last 2 games before All-Star break. Hearing that Jericho Sims, who missed the last 3 games with an illness, is traveling with the team today to Houston. He has risen from the dead.
Vampire.
Ladies and gentlemen, he is a vampire. It all comes full circle.
I need that first question.
In the first 20 minutes and has rose again
Hold on.
the last few seconds.
I need that first question to be, how is scarlet fever? And what would you recommend to survive that for anyone who else catches it?
Guys, I gotta run. I gotta go tell my wife to cancel a flower delivery to somebody's family.
Gotcha.
Awesome to hear, Jericho. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Steve Popper, for tweeting that out. And thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Please don't put us in hell, or me at least.
We will talk to Bernie, that man.
Not hell, detention.
Detention.
As we discussed. Yeah.
It's the same thing. All right. Talk to everybody later. Bye.